Good afternoon. I'm Alan Unell, and this series of videos is Healthcare Advocacy, where we address problems in the healthcare system and then take actions to try and make a better system for all of us. Today we're going to be talking about the pharmacy industry and the kind of investments they make. But before we do that, I want to point out that down below in the YouTube description box is a link to the Healthcare Advocacy newsletter, which is the text for today's video. You will find all the links to the references, news stories, scientific research, links to other organizations, and the actions that we talk about. They're all in that newsletter. Okay, so let's get started. The Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America is an industry association that represents research-based pharmaceutical and biotech companies. They lobby for the pharmacy industry, and recently they spent millions lobbying against the Inflation Reduction Act because it had a provision to negotiate 10 drugs for Medicare recipients. It was reported last month that they have donated more than $500,000 to organizations planning what a MAGA, M-A-G-A, policy agenda will look like if there's a new Trump administration. Now, there's a link to that report in the newsletter. It is from accountable.us. Those plans, in case you weren't aware, also include massive deportations and detention camps, gutting the civil service and replacing government employees with political lackeys, and turning the Justice Department and the military against political enemies and threats to their power. There is a link to Project 2025 in the newsletter, and read it if you can. It is hard to read because it is just so painful. There is a list of the organizations that they chose to support to build that, and I'm going to share it with you. The Heritage Foundation received $125,000 from PhRMA, the lobbying group, and they are the architect of Project 2025. The Heritage Foundation maintains a so-called election fraud database that is based on unfounded claims that voter fraud is widespread. A Brookings Institution analysis of that data finding Texas voter fraud was a mere, I have to count the zeros, 0.000096%. I used to be a mathematician. That looks like statistically irrelevant. As Heritage personnel push allegations of third parties harvesting mail-in ballots to influence election results. That's garbage. Anyway, American Commitment, another conservative nonprofit dedicated to free markets, economic growth, and constitutionally limited government and property rights and individual freedom. They got $75,000 from PhRMA. In January 2019, American Commitment joined conservative groups in attacking H.R. 1, the For the People Act, which had been described as the most significant voting rights and democracy reform in more than half a century, as fundamentally undermining the American electoral system. Those are their words. The American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, got money, an organization of conservative state legislators dedicated to the principles of limited government and free markets and federalism. They got $110,000 from PhRMA. PhRMA also donated $75,000 to committees tied to Florida House Representative Daniel Perez, an insurance attorney who served as the 2023 ALEC National Chair and is the current Speaker of the Florida House of Representatives. In early 2020, ALEC CEO Lisa Nelson was involved in discussions on how conservative state legislators and attorneys could question the validity of an election. They're trying to decide how to do it, including drafting letters for legislators to send to secretaries of state. The Competitive Enterprise Institute, CEI, a conservative think tank, received $25,000 from PhRMA. The CEI president and CEO, Kent Lassman, co-authored a chapter of the Mandate for Leadership related to trade, while 7 other CEI employees were cited as contributors. In November 2021, CEI Senior Fellow Mario Loyola also contributed to the Mandate for Leadership, parroted bogus claims that January 6 should not have been labeled an insurrection, given that it had no chance with progressives' control of all institutions, likening progressive protesters in Wisconsin and Texas to insurrectionists, and claiming the media would have called the election stolen if Trump loyalists had won. FreedomWorks, a conservative advocacy group, received $70,000 from PhRMA. Stephen Moore, FreedomWorks senior economist, co-authored a chapter of Project 2025's Mandate for Leadership, discussing policy recommendations within the U.S. Treasury Department, while two other FreedomWorks employees were listed as contributors to the report. Following the 2020 presidential election, FreedomWorks amplified baseless voter fraud claims and later selected conservative election lawyer Cleta Mitchell to lead its National Election Protection Initiative, seeking to restrict state voter access while also rallying opposition to federal legislation that would expand voter access. Cleta Mitchell closely advised Donald Trump in his efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election and has since continued to advocate for restricted voter access, including an April 2023 discussion with conservative donors where she pressed the need to limit voting on college campuses, same-day voter registration, and automatic mailing of ballots to registered voters as reforms were needed for any candidate other than a leftist to have a chance to win in 2024. The Pacific Research Institute, a conservative think tank dedicated to advancing free market policy solutions, they got $125,000 from PhRMA. In a June 2020 op-ed, Pacific Research Institute fellow Kerry Jackson spouted right-wing claims that mail-in ballots would lead to worse results and ballot harvesting to influence election results, claiming the U.S. government shouldn't make it too easy for voters to cast ballots. I need to take a deep breath. Virtually every new drug approved by the FDA from 2010 to 2020 was the result of public investment. There's a reference to back that up, and I have that link in the newsletter. So these guys, they make a fortune, we pay for the research, and they want fascists to take over the government, so they'll make more money. Let's take a deep breath. This same nice lobbying group, PhRMA, also filed a lawsuit to halt those drug negotiations. A federal district judge, though, this past week, granted the Biden administration's request to dismiss their lawsuit challenging Medicare's new drug price negotiation program from the drug industry lobbying organization PhRMA. The move is an early but positive sign for the Biden administration in a legal fight that could stretch for years, as, guess what? A host of other drug makers, including Merck, Bristol Myers Squibb, and Johnson & Johnson, also filed lawsuits over the constitutionality of Medicare's new powers. The link to the article is in the newsletter. I want you to remember something. That law that was passed allows for the negotiation of 10 drugs. This past January, 600 prescription drugs had price increases. 600. They're going to make it up. Okay, look, over 30% of us have skipped taking medication because of the cost of drugs, according to the Kaiser Family Foundation. There's only one way to get drug prices effectively under control, and that's to negotiate. And the way to negotiate all of them is universal health care, just like all of our other peer nations, industrialized nations, do. Let's remind our legislators over and over again that they need to look out for us, not the drug companies. Let's take an action to call or write our member of Congress and our senators and let them know we need universal health care, like H.R. 3421, that will enable negotiation for all prescription drugs for all 330 million of us. Contact information is in the resource section below, or what I like to do, use ResistBot. On your cell phone, You can just send a text message. Here's the message. It's sign, S-I-G-N, space, P-I-H-X-K-I, P-I-H-X-K-I, and you send that to 50409, and here's the email you'll be sending. I'm your constituent, and I am appalled that PhRMA, the drug industry lobby, has been trying to stop the government's negotiation of 10 drugs. Meanwhile, 600 drugs went up in price this past January. I want you to take notice that we, the people, are being taken to the cleaners when we can least afford it. Over 30% of us have skipped medication because of the cost. If we had universal health care in place like H.R. 3421, then we could negotiate fair prices for all of us. I know you're really busy, but this is a real kitchen table issue, and you can fix it. Co-sponsor and enact universal health care. H.R. 3421, lower the cost of drugs for all of us. Here's an extra credit action. Healthcare transparency. You can send a message to your senators, this is senators, by texting sign, S-I-G-N, P-E-K-Z-V-J to 50409. And here's what it's about. I'll just read you the message. I strongly urge you to prioritize and pass Senate Bill 3548, the Healthcare Prices Revealed and Information to Consumers Explained, it's hard to say, Transparency Act, to end overcharging for health care and to give Americans clear hospital prices. For too long, people like me haven't been able to get an upfront accurate price for the healthcare services we need. With healthcare prices rising, we are shouldering more of the cost out of our own pocket, so it's more important than ever to be able to find clear prices in dollars and cents. 2 years ago, hospitals were required to list their prices for shoppable services, but too many post them in very hard to understand formulas using complicated digital files. Gee, I wonder why. We need hospital prices in dollars and cents rather than unreliable estimates or hard to use formulas. We need to have clear pricing for healthcare treatments before we receive them. Please vote to require hospital price transparency, to improve competitive pricing between facilities, and to institute site-neutral payments to eliminate unnecessary overcharges in doctors' offices. The House has already passed this bill, the healthcare price transparency legislation. It's time for the Senate to do their part. Thank you. All of this would go away with universal health care. Just keep that in mind. Anyway, down below you can like, share, subscribe. You can get a free subscription to Healthcare Advocacy's daily newsletter, and you can send me comments in the comment field or at healthcareadvocacy1@gmail.com. Have a good day. Thank you.